So welcome. My name is Petra Sultan. I'm the Senior Programs Director for Thrive, the Alliance of Nonprofits for San Mateo County, and we're here to talk about the Inflation Reduction Act, local impacts of the largest climate bill ever. I want to introduce my team that's here. Georgia Farouk, our Executive Director, Tracy Flor Figueroa, Kirsten Scheidegg are all here from the Thrive team. Thrive is a membership-based organization. We're the Alliance of Nonprofits for San Mateo County. You can become a member, you can join our newsletters. We have lots of different newsletters to choose from different subject areas, and please become an active member of Thrive. We decided to address this because there were so many questions about this huge bill. There's so many parts to it, and there's so much that's important, and it's such a milestone that finally Congress was able to pass something that actually addresses climate change. There was definitely things in there that we hoped would be different. There are definitely things in there that we hoped wouldn't be in there, and vice versa. But I think it's really important to know what is in the bill and how that affects us locally. How can we take advantage of this? So with that, we're going to have Brian Perkins from Congresswoman Speier's office, as well as Jared Johnson from Acterra, speak to those things. But before that, I'd like to share some exciting events about Thrive and some announcements. So at the next slide, Thrive is over 200 cross-sector organizations, and we hope that you will become one of them. The next slide. What we do is we strengthen people and organizations and communities through capacity building, through cross-sector collaboration, and through policy and advocacy. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the events that we have coming up. The next slide. These are some of the things that we've done in the past, including a town hall with Congresswoman Speier. We have a lot of different issue areas that we work on. This one is the environment and sustainability one, and it is supported by Peninsula Clean Energy. Next slide. So I just want to do a special shout out and thank you for all of the support that Peninsula Clean Energy gives us for the important work that we're doing in the environment. Next slide. Thrive is starting a new program that is actually an old program. Over 20 years ago, Thrive was the COAD, the Community Organizations Active in Disaster Center for San Mateo, and then for a long time, there wasn't a COAD in San Mateo County. And so we are now resurrecting that. We are going to be the Center for Resilience and Shared Emergencies, is our name for it, Thrive Rise. And you will be hearing much more about it. The idea is to have a place where the nonprofits and faith-based organizations organize to be prepared for an emergency, to respond for an emergency, and to work on recovery after an emergency. Next slide. We have another exciting announcement, which is that we have been working for about a year to put together a climate summit for San Mateo County. There has never been an opportunity for everyone who's working on environment and sustainability in the county to come together in one place. So on October 3rd, we will have a full day. We are doing this with our partners, Climate Resilient Communities, Nuestra Casa and Rise South City. And Peninsula Clean Energy is one of our sponsors as well. And lots more information about that on our website. And please reach out to me if you have any specific questions. We're also doing candidate forums. As you know, Congresswoman Speier is retiring. So we're going to be having a candidate forum for the person who will replace her. The district's a little bit different, but it's mostly, there's a lot of overlap. And that's going to be next Wednesday night. And we are going, Wednesday afternoons, excuse me. And we're going to be having the nonprofit members of Thrive be the ones to ask the questions. So they're really going to be addressing the issues that affect the community of nonprofits. We also have the 2 Board of Supervisors candidate forums coming up as well. Next slide. Those 2 will be in person. Next slide. I think I don't have to tell everyone in this room about how housing is super important. There's a lot of advocacy work that can be done around housing. Specifically right now, there's an opportunity with the housing elements. So we are inviting you to come to the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative community space and work with us, DMV Action, and some other great nonprofits to talk about what nonprofits can do to advocate for more housing, especially more affordable housing for low income and very low income people. So join us for that. And you're always welcome to our every other month Thrive Wellness Wednesdays. And the last Thrive commercial that you'll hear today is for our Education Summit. This is for community-based organizations that are working in anything that supports children, but especially out of school time, and the school districts to really build those relationships and have more opportunities for community-based organizations to serve the most vulnerable children. So any questions about those, reach out to me, reach out to Kirsten. Take down the slide deck for just a second. With that, we're going to go ahead and start the program. So I first want to introduce Brian Perkins. He's the Senior Policy Advisor for Congresswoman Speier. He's worked with her in various capacities for 25 years, both while she served in Congress and when she served in the state legislature. And he's going to give us an overview of the Inflation Reduction Act. Thank you, Brian.
Well, thank you, Petra, and thank you for the wonderful introduction to Thrive. And thank you, Thrive, for inviting us here today to talk about this. If we could put up the first slide, I want to make a point because actually my first slide should have been Thrive first slide because you were showing Redwood Shores. But the point is that we have a lot of vulnerable property here in San Mateo County, and we have an entire district known as, it's got a complicated name, but its simple name is One Shoreline. And the purpose of that district is to try to grab local, state, and federal grants, and then to help local agencies deal with climate change and sea level rise that'll be the result. And the reason that's so important is because San Mateo County is the #1 county in California at risk from climate change. If you take a look at the maps, 40% of our land by 2100 could be adversely affected by climate change issues. So what we're talking about today is a subject that is national in initiation, but highly local in its impact. If we could go to the next slide, please. This is the Inflation Reduction Act in the big picture. There's $749 billion over 10 years, which even by the standards of the federal government is a large number. It's either in new spending or cost reductions or increased tax collections. 433 of that is new spending. And so the government over 10 years on net is expected to dedicate about $300 billion towards reducing the federal deficit. Now, broadly speaking, reducing the federal deficit reduces inflation, as do many other specific provisions in the bill, which we can talk about later. But as you can see, the biggest part of the bill's spending is dedicated to climate change and energy, something of extraordinary importance to San Mateo County. Next slide, please. So that $369 billion, it covers a range of incentives for solar panels and heat pumps and energy efficiency and penalties for excessive emissions of methane, which is new and highly important, and then funds for disadvantaged communities and cleanups. That's the very broad picture of the biggest part of this bill. There's also a whole other part of this bill that's directly connected to the mission of some of you in Thrive, and that is the portion that extended healthcare subsidies for ACA-based health insurance. And if you have questions, I could address that as well. But for today, let's go to the next slide for a moment to deal with the climate issues. We're all going to be eligible, most of us will be eligible for home energy rebates, for electrifying our house, for solar credits. And that credit now, importantly, is going to last for 10 years. In the past, it was for various lengths of time. And in our district office, we would get phone calls saying from producers, Congress needs to reinitiate this and make sure that the solar credit continues or my business is going to go out of business. Concurrently, we would also get calls from people saying, hey, I'm about to sign a contract for solar on my house, but doesn't make sense because is Congress going to extend it? Now it's there for 10 years. It's really important given the nature of San Mateo County, where we actually produce a lot of solar. There's also $8,000 to install a heat pump, $9 billion for low-income families to electrify their homes. We'll deal with the tax credit for new electric vehicles in a moment, and the tax credit for building up advanced manufacturing. And next slide, let's deal with the electric vehicles. I think I looked it up, and I think electric vehicles at the moment constitute around 25% of all vehicle sales in San Mateo County. It's huge, certainly huge relative to the national market. So there had been a restriction on electric vehicles where if a manufacturer had more than 2,000 particular model, they lost their eligibility for offering a credit for the public. That's gone now. And by the way, this is for electric vehicles now. So the credits that maybe some of us received for our plug-in hybrids, those are going away. The other kinds of credits are going away. This is strictly for pure electric vehicles. As I mentioned, there's going to be a federal credit now for 10 years, so the industry can actually plan and invest over the course of 10 years. Importantly, the credit's going to be available at a point of sale. So you're going to be looking at the manufacturer's suggested retail price, and you'll actually get the money back at that point, rather than having to get the money back a year or a year and a half later when you do your taxes. It makes a whole different change to the psychology of buying an electric vehicle. There's going to be some, the credits are largely going to be concentrated on domestic manufacture and assembly with some pretty specific details. And the price of the vehicles is also going to be capped. And in fact, I've got the prices here. For new cars, the vehicle is going to have to be $55,000 or less for a conventional vehicle, or $80,000 or less for pickups, SUVs, and vans. Then on top of that, there's going to be a brand new $4,000 credit for the purchase of a used electric vehicle. Many of these things were included within a bill that Congresswoman Speier actually authored in the prior Congress. And our staff at the time and the Congresswoman shopped that bill extensively throughout Congress. In that year, there wasn't a lot of interest in it. This was when they were doing the infrastructure bill, and the infrastructure bill competed with this priority. But importantly, our staff and the Congresswoman went to Chuck Schumer's office, the Senate Majority Leader, and his staff apparently adopted a lot of the ideas into this electric credit bill. So we're very proud to be copied, if imitation is the highest form of flattery. Next slide, please. There's a hidden element to this bill which insiders are aware of, and that's important for the American economy. We talk about there being this huge amount of direct payment for these various credits and so forth. But there's also a huge loan program that isn't counted as spending, because money that goes out comes back and it nets out as being actually makes a little money for the federal government. That's $350 billion over a decade. And this is for the kinds of things that in the past have been crucial in getting a lot of companies started. Tesla relied upon the loan program to tool up and to convert from their sports cars that they made in the early days, by the way, down in San Carlos. Those sports cars were all hand assembled in San Carlos. And they will now, other manufacturers, be able to use these credits and these loan programs for purposes of tooling up to build batteries and for converting their factories from conventional vehicles over to electric vehicle. We're almost certainly going to see the benefit of the Inflation Reduction Act with respect to one of our only remaining nuclear plant here in California. Today or tomorrow, the governor is likely to sign a bill that will prolong the life of the one remaining nuclear plant. And they're anticipating getting $1.5 billion to help PG&E prolong the life of that plant for at least, I think, through the year 2030, if I remember correctly. These loans have also been used, for example, for conversion of the old fossil fuel plant out at Moss Landing. For those of you that know the electric generating plant there, that now plant, the perimeter of the plant looks almost the same, but if you look down into the guts of the plant, it's all been taken out, and now it's a stack of batteries. And when our electric energy at the moment, for example, is being generated by solar, a lot of it's being stored there at Moss Landing. And then tonight, as we need that electric energy, those batteries discharge and provide the rest of us. We also have new drilling technology for geothermal that may come on, and there's going to be minerals development for batteries as well. There's a huge push in this bill to get the United States to create its own batteries because China and Korea are actually the two leading sources. And those from a national security standpoint are not good sources for electric batteries. Next slide, please. Now, in this bill is something that's very important, and that is that there's a new charge of $900 per metric ton of emissions of methane. And if you examine the methane production facilities, not only here in the United States, but around the globe, the oil and gas industry will claim that there's a certain amount coming out from those facilities, but when it actually is examined with higher grade instrumentation and frankly, less bias in the examination, those facilities are a huge source of global climate change gases. And so this emissions tax, frankly, is there in order to encourage the companies to actually clamp down on the emissions and try and get them under control. This is the first time ever in the federal government for methane emissions that there's going to be such a tax. And the bill also deals with a recent Supreme Court case that struck down a portion of the Biden administration's plan. They had planned to regulate carbon emissions from fossil fuel generating plants. The Supreme Court said, sorry, Congress never gave that explicit language to the US EPA. This bill now grants this authority by calling this an actual pollutant under EPA law. Next one, please. And so here's the profound impact of the bill, according to the projections. If you just follow current policy, we would reduce our emissions by roughly 25 to 35% as of 2030, but this one will substantially increase our reductions to go from 31 to 44%. That's huge. And again, if you think of San Mateo County, the flood line as of 2100, the flood line is roughly the El Camino Real. So if we can do any of these steps, and in fact, if we meet this goal and more, it's a big step towards trying to avoid that kind of an ultra catastrophic outcome for us. Next slide, please. I was asked to give you local examples of economic impacts. I had to stop very early on because the local impact from this bill is profound and it's economy-wide. One of the reasons the Congresswoman created a bill on electric cars, aside from the moment in time when we made Tesla Roadsters locally, this district doesn't make electric cars, but this district does an intensive amount of research into battery technology. It does a lot of research into autonomous vehicles, which is a related subject. And there's a lot of research being done at our regional labs here, and I didn't put up Stanford. They also have an extensive amount of work. A lot of the money is going to come right here for that research. It'll also go to the Research Triangle in North Carolina, for example, some to Austin. But the Bay Area is going to benefit immensely from the research dollars that are coming here. Ubiquitous Energy is an interesting company down in Redwood City. They actually create film coatings over conventional glass, and then that coating turns the conventional glass window into a solar system. And I've looked at it in operation. It's pretty amazing stuff. There's one company that's going to be able to benefit almost certainly from some of the loan programs that are coming up. Acterra is one of these instrumentation companies that got started in a garage about 13 years ago. And we discovered it at the time of the San Bruno gas pipeline explosion. They do greenhouse gas monitoring, hypersensitive monitoring, so that they can actually uncover what's really being emitted. These are the kinds of companies, along with Berkeley Labs, Lawrence Berkeley Labs, that are going to be able to benefit. Next slide, please. The image across the top of the slide tells you where the bill anticipates most of the benefits will come from for the climate. The dark blue is from changing the power generation of the United States from fossil fuel generation over to more renewable energy. And then you see the other sources. We don't have fossil fuel generation here in the Bay Area anymore for electricity purposes. The last two plants that were closed down in San Francisco closed down about a decade ago. But again, because we have a lot of the intellectual infrastructure for the United States on these issues, this bill is going to be a huge local benefit. We'll also benefit locally. because our diesel bus fleets will be eligible for grants for Samtrans and Muni and so forth. The United States Postal Service is going to get rid of its 1990s fleet and will upgrade to electric. We're going to transition. One of the things that I think is going to be a hidden impact locally is that right now, much of the office building growth that's going on the peninsula is centered around biotechnology. It's likely that we're going to see more of that office building growth around the issue of around the research activities related to renewable energies. And as I keep trying to remind local governments, office buildings is just another way of saying that you need more housing. And then one of the other questions that comes up is about the nature of our grid and our power supply and how things are going to develop over time. There's a lot of criticism of the current strategy of trying to take our wildlands, particularly our desert areas, and generating renewable energy there from vast solar fields and bringing it here locally. There's a movement to try to generate more of that just from rooftop solar and from other facilities locally, acres and acres, hundreds of thousands of acres of available space. So as these solar credits roll out, hopefully this will be more of an incentive for all of us to seriously consider that. And so that's just about it for me. And then of course I can answer questions as people have them. And if I don't have the answer, of course I can get back to you.
Thank you, Brian. A huge amount of information. A couple of highlights for me is just the reminder that like El Camino is kind of the floodline. That's scary. So this is at least encouraging that we're doing more work. And the other thing that you mentioned that I think gets lost a little bit is the Supreme Court, that this helps with what the Supreme Court had decided, excuse me, that Congress couldn't regulate because they didn't have specific, they hadn't said specifically that they would do it. Now that they can, that just leaves things really open. So that was also just one of those victories that's a little bit more wonky, but probably pretty important.
Can I address just that one for a moment, Petra? Because I want people to understand how radical the Supreme Court is at the moment, as if we didn't already know. But the nature of federal legislation is that it tends to make a grant of authority to a federal agency, and then the federal agency fleshes out the specifics. And I worked in an entirely different environment when I was helping to draft state legislation. We were highly prescriptive. I would sit down, I happened to work in the insurance code, but we would tell the Department of Insurance, you do this, A, B, C, and D, or we would tell the Department of Transportation, Caltrans, you do this, A, B, C, and D. Supreme Court said, no, the way you've been doing it historically isn't good enough. Do it the way the states do it, be highly prescriptive. And if you follow that line of reasoning across public policy generally, it's an unworkable framework. You simply can't have Congress get down to that level of detail. There are too many issues and there isn't enough time. And while the Supreme Court criticized the EPA for grabbing power it didn't have, it was actually the Supreme Court, the one who grabbed power in effect by nullifying the traditional way in which statutes have been interpreted. And they chose a favored target, of course. This time it was the environment.
Thank you. We have some questions in the chat. If you have additional questions, feel free to raise your virtual hand or put them in chat. From Ann Schneider, South San Francisco Scavengers turns green and food scraps into biomethane that they then use to run the garbage recycling fleet. So will anaerobic digestion operations be subject to the methane charge?
Probably, but there will be a countervailing force as well. South San Francisco Scavengers and others will be eligible for investments if they want to take out loans in order to grow their facilities. So you'll have both forces working on that particular example. The biggest impacts, though, are probably going to be with the oil and gas industry. There's a threshold, and I couldn't tell Ann or anybody at the moment what that threshold is. I'm not sure the scavengers, for example, are large enough to be part of that threshold. But the biggest impact is going to be in having the ability to borrow money at relatively cheap rates in order to expand those capabilities and to thoroughly clamp down on the capture so that you can maximize the value.
Next question is probably pretty easy. Can we get a copy of these slides?
Thrive has them, so you can send them out.
Excellent. We will, as we always do, send out the slides afterwards, as well as a link to the recording. So
there's no copyright on all my plagiarized material.
Excellent. From John McKenna, how and when can cities and counties access the funds for existing building electrification?
You know, I don't have the answer to that question, and it probably won't be available for a while. These are programs that are largely in existence, but they're scaling up. So the grant application process has to be scaled up as well. So I'm sorry, John, I don't have an answer for that. I would just recommend that people watch their professional publications, because those deadlines are definitely going to be published. The crude way of doing it, of course, is to go to grants.com. If you've never gone to grants.com, it's a wonderful afternoon exercise, but keep a lot of coffee on hand because you need to stay awake. Put in some keywords, but really it's the professional organizations and their announcements that you should be signing up for.
Does anybody else in the room have an answer for that? Kirsten, I'm looking at you.
Sure. Hi, I'm Kirsten Anderson with Peninsula Clean Energy. For folks who don't know us, we are the local electricity provider and public agency here in San Mateo County. And we do offer electrification programs. So we're actually ramping up more subsidies coming up in the next couple of months. And this is going to really dovetail nicely with what we're already doing. We already offer rebates on heat pump water heaters, and there's some great additional rebates coming from this bill. And so I imagine that we will stack those rebates with our current programs. We already stack our rebates with regional rebates from regional entities. You can stack them with the PG&E rebates. So we'll continue to offer like easy pathways for homeowners to take advantage of these technologies, installing heat pump water heaters and heat pump HVAC, heating and cooling. Because it's the same piece of machinery. You can have heating and you can get cooling with a heat pump. We'll actually be rolling out 0% financing. So if you have any, in a couple of months, so if you have any extra charges on your project, you can finance that at 0% on your electricity bill. And so all this additional money coming through, I imagine we will just add it to the rebates you can stack on our programs. And so I recommend folks keep an eye on our website for how they can take advantage of this as homeowners.
And well, go ahead.
Well, to get to John's question, or Diane's question, actually, is basically how can low and middle income households access the generous rebates? We were just asking that question. Jared and I were going about this before the presentation. It's not yet clear. The money itself is going to go to the state of California. What's not yet clear is where it's going to go after that. Historically, they've done programs through the California Energy Commission, but I'm not sure myself where the money is going to wind up. So watch the press and watch for announcements.
And we'll be sure to send out information, and I'm sure PCE will keep us in the loop as to when they know things. I do want to point out just something that Kirsten said about the heat pumps, that a lot of people don't know, probably most of you in the room know, but that it's the same thing for heating and cooling. And as we're having more and more extreme heat emergencies, like, oh, I don't know, this weekend, that the more people we can get to have, especially low-income people, to have the heat pump system so that they have access to cooling, the better. So this is a win-win on that side of climate change too, on the mitigation.
And to your point, Petra, I'm pretty sure I saw recently that there's a small scale heat pump system that's available for mounting in a window. So that would be for apartment dwellers, like a traditional air conditioning unit. Only because it's a heat pump, it's more efficient, less costly to operate. I would have to double check, but the heat pump technology is not new technology per se, but for consumer purposes, it's now coming into its own. So people should check online and check for apartment heat pumps and see what they find. I'll bet it's out there. I'm not going to do it now because my clicking will distract from us. But
Kirsten's nodding, so I'm guessing it exists.
There you go. Okay.
Anne, would you like to ask a question?
I just wanted to say thank you, Brian. I'm speaking next week at League of California Cities on all of the new infrastructure we need to grow for green and food waste. So that will be good for them. Not sure it'll help South City because we already invested, but thank you. Flip side of the question. Oh, sorry.
Well, I wouldn't give up on a loan activity just because you already invested. One of the frustrating things for me is that we do invest a lot around here in these sorts of things, but we're also then poised to go to the next level. And, you know, we're not someplace in the other side of the country that doesn't know how to do these sorts of things. And these energy programs are actually important. And it's a little bit frustrating for the Congresswoman that we don't get more grants here locally for some of these things when we see the grants in other parts of the country. So please have South City if they want to at some point in the future, not now, but maybe in about 2 months, check in with us and maybe we can find something.
Absolutely. And just for the Congresswoman, this will go statewide next week. So my other question, when I was looking through all the infrastructure money, I didn't necessarily see anything that would help convert secondary sewage treatment plants to tertiary water, which has an energy component. Any luck, anything there? I know Palo Alto just got $6 million or 12 million, and Sonoma got 6 million from the state budget to move to tertiary.
I didn't see anything that was that specific to the US EPA because a lot of that money presently comes through their programs for low interest loans. So I could check on that and see and get back to you.
That would be lovely. Thank you. City of Millbrae, we are trying to go tertiary. We'll become a water supplier then. But we think the price tag is $30 to $40 million.
Right.
Thank you, Anne. Sophie, do you want to ask your question live? Otherwise, I'm happy to do it for you.
Sure, I can ask my question live. So I work for the Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District. We're a government agency. We own about 50 properties that are residences that are rented out to staff and to members of the public. And we really, really want to improve the energy efficiency of these buildings, but because we have so many of them, it's sort of cost prohibitive to do a lot of that work at once, especially. And so I'm wondering if there will be opportunities through this heat pump rebate for agencies like mine to take advantage of some of those cost lowering, even though we're not, individual residents or homeowners.
I believe there was a government component of that money. I can get back to you, but I'm almost certain there was a government component of that, a set aside for government. I can get back to you.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you. Irma?
Sorry. Hi, I'm Irma Rodriguez-Mitten, and I am with South Coast Sustainable. We are in the unincorporated southern portion of San Mateo County. We used to be Congresswoman Speier's district, but no longer.
We go to San Gregorio.
Yeah, there you go. Good. What provisions are in the IRA for workforce development? Our key problem out here is even with investment and rebates available for these technologies, and especially with our lower income residents, we don't have the plumbing and heating contractors who will come to this area. There's just not enough of them. We know there's a database. We know that we can access it, but there aren't enough of them and they don't come. So we need to encourage these small businesses to install and maintain these EV chargers, everything here in the less densely populated areas.
Yeah, I apologize for the clicking if you overheard it, folks, but I didn't see, and this article is confirming that there isn't a lot of money in there for skills development in this particular bill. I would caution you though, because the infrastructure bill contained quite a bit of that money. And so I know that there were grants and commitments made for grants that impacted a lot of the training groups here in the Bay Area. So you might want to contact, just for an expert opinion on it, Job Train in Menlo Park, because they're definitely plugged into the skills training. They do a whole skills training on solar installation, I believe, and they can tell you if there was anything there. But I don't believe that this is suggesting that there really isn't much in this bill. It was mostly, I believe, in the infrastructure bill from last year.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, right. I'm just rereading this.
Go ahead, Diane.
Hi, this is Diane Bailey with Menlo Spark and Fossil Free Buildings. And I just wanted to speak to the workforce development issue. It's a great question. I have the same question about funds from the IRA, but I did want to note that the city of Menlo Park is working with an outside firm called Block Power, as well as the local nonprofit Job Train, to start new workforce development programs specifically on electrification and helping homeowners do the upgrades, as well as multifamily. Those programs are slated to start in January of next year, and they're looking at training about 50 people per year. And I'm sure they would love to scale up those programs if additional funds were available. But I'm happy to connect interested folks to the right staff at Job Train if there's more interest.
And, I'm noticing a comment here about how Councilwoman Ruddock in Half Moon Bay couldn't get a contractor to do a heat pump installation in Half Moon Bay. It seems to me like some of these problems actually could be handled through the trades locally. I know that quite a few of the companies that are union companies here in San Mateo County are plumbing companies, and they do these kinds of installations. Maybe it's a question about reaching out to those union companies and asking them if they could make it a point at this point to extend their service territories. Because there's one company in particular here in the city of San Mateo, where I am at the moment, that goes to my house in San Carlos all the time. It's not actually all that much further to go out to Half Moon Bay than it is to go to San Carlos from San Mateo. So be happy if someone had a particular area, and you were mentioning, I suppose, Pescadero, we could probably talk about whether some of those contractors could also start to service them from Redwood City.
Thank you, Brian. Does anybody else have questions for Brian before we move on to JJ? Thank you so much for that super informative presentation. We're going to take kind of the more local view now with Acterra, one of our local Bay Area wide now organizations. So Jared Johnson is the Senior Manager for Policy and External Relations for Acterra. He has extensive experience directing and organizing issue-specific campaigns. He's worked on issues ranging from stopping the routine use of antibiotics on factory farms to lobbying state legislatures for campaign finance reform. He currently manages all of Acterra's climate policy campaigns, which include expanding access to EV charging, advocating the switch away from gas appliances, and reforming the food system to be more sustainable. So with that very large amount of things that he's doing, I hope that you can really give us some local interpretations of what the IRA can do for us.
Well, thank you for the introduction, Petra, and thank you for going into all the detail, Brian, on the Inflation Reduction Act. Here at Acterra, as you kind of mentioned, we do a lot in terms of the climate, and outside of our policy work, we also have a lot of programming around helping folks figure out how to get into an EV for the first time, both on how to utilize the incentives. We're working on trying to figure out where folks can charge, educating people on how to use induction cooking, induction stoves, and a lot more. And a lot of that education will be necessary for this bill. But first, and we talked about this a little earlier, you can actually bring up my slideshow now. Unless you want me to share it.
I don't think I have your slides on hand, if you wouldn't mind sharing.
Okay. Are you seeing the slideshow? Yes. Okay. So we talked about this earlier, and there are lots of open questions around how the funding is going to be distributed. As you all asked and Brian, we are still here locally. We know that the state of California is going to be working with the DOE on how the funds and rebates are distributed. And I feel like PC may have more answers to that question in the coming weeks, but will they be administered through the CEC or the CPUC? I believe the rebates for EVs will more than likely be managed through the Clean Cars rebate program. And there's a plethora of statewide solar programs that are more than likely going to utilize the funding for solar panel incentives, but there's still questions around, at least I have questions based on the research I've been doing around how these rebates are interact with the rebates coming from PCE and BayREN and the other CCAs. So definitely going to be keeping an eye on grants.com. There's also a lot more money out there, and Brian touched on it a little bit, than just the money that's available for rebates and tax credits. There's also loan authority that's going to allow folks to use, I think it's 250 billion in loan authority granted for the infrastructure reinvestment loan program. And those monies can be used for green projects. And we should be thinking about that pool of money as we're thinking about how projects can be funded, and not only focusing in on the rebates. So there's lots of opportunities for nonprofits to work with developers on green projects to secure funding, and opportunities for local governments to also access green financing. Moving further along in what the role of nonprofits are, is there's a lot of need for education around this bill. Talking to our constituents about how it works and how it affects them. For example, with the EV rebates, there is going to be a lot of change between how and what rebates you'll be able to access right now versus the rebates you'll be able to access immediately after January 1st, and the rebates you'll be able to access as more and more companies produce more of the battery materials and do more of their assembly here in the US. There's going to be a just ever-changing list of what cars are going to be eligible for rebates. Additionally, like other programs, the dealers are going to be working with these individuals to make sure, and this is new, to make sure that they are income eligible in order to receive these rebates. So individuals are going to have to know, hey, I might need to bring my 1040 with me to the dealership in order for me to be able to prove I'm income eligible in order to get this tax credit. So I feel like there's a big role for nonprofits to be educating folks, one, getting them prepared for the changes that are going to happen in the EV rebates, and helping folks know how to best utilize them. Similarly for rebates and tax credits, I think specifically tax credits in this case for energy efficiency and for energy efficient appliances or electric appliances. There are up to $1,200 for energy efficiency improvements, but that doesn't include heat pumps. For heat pumps, there's a higher cap of being able to get up to $2,000. And there used to be a lifetime cap on these types of tax credits. I think originally that cap for new windows, as an example, was $200 lifetime. So you only be able to get $200 for energy efficient windows. But now that lifetime cap is gone. However, there's a cap on how much money you can get in tax incentives in a particular year. So the best scheme for someone more than likely to utilize all these tax credits is to stagger when they do improvements. Maybe the first year they do improvements trying to get a new heat pump or a new heat pump water heater. And after that, they may focus on incentives around EV charging and EV charging infrastructure. And lastly, they use incentives, tax incentives that at third year are windows and doors, or windows and doors may actually go under the same tax credit. But talking through how to utilize these credits, because the utilization of this money is going to determine how much of an impact it is. And if folks don't know if they're eligible, and this moves to my next point of building awareness, we need to build awareness among constituents that There are these new rebates and tax credits available for them to use. Teach them and talk to them about how it's different from what it was before, and how it may be simpler or more complicated depending on what tax credits or rebates we're talking about. And then building awareness amongst policymakers that, when we're trying to do things like funded mandates, which I might get into a bit later, there's more money out there for individuals to access when we're trying to, say, put permitting requirements on whether you can make your next heating system one that's gas, or if it's only allowed to be electric. And lastly, I feel there's a role for nonprofits to provide services to make it easier for folks that utilize tax credits and rebates. Here at Acterra, we've been creating a long laundry list of all the rebates available in the area. And after this pass, we're going to be working to continue to update that list. And we hope to work with companies to provide a easy tool so someone could put in their zip code and what they want a rebate for, get a nice small range for what they might expect, and a number of someone to call to be able to talk with them about how to utilize that tax credit, probably in that case. So thinking about how can we make it as easy as possible for people to actually utilize these benefits, it's going to be really important for this law to be as successful as we want it to be. And lastly, as I was mentioning, because there's more money for people to utilize in order to make their homes more energy efficient and to switch to electric appliances, there's a larger opportunity to have funded mandates. I know places like San Mateo City are looking at updating the reach codes. Lots of cities across the Bay Area are looking at updating the reach codes, particularly for existing buildings. And we know that unlike for new construction, you have to be very wary of the economics that families have to go through. And these rebates can allow us to make up or basically create parity between the initial cost of installing like a heat pump, for example, that's gas, or a heat pump that's electric, and a furnace that's gas. And by demonstrating to policymakers that there can be this equity between this cost equity, we will be able to push for more bold legislation. So just keep in mind when we're talking to policymakers that there's more money available for constituents to use, and we're working on how to make it easier for constituents to access that money. Second, thinking or talking to policymakers about how this legislation sets a clear path forward for the country. A lot of things have been happening recently, and I think if you talked to me a year ago, I might have been very bleak about what we're going to do if we're going to really do something major to address climate change. But now, when we're talking to policymakers, we can talk with confidence, knowing that America is going to be committing billions of dollars to infrastructure improvements and for home improvements to make sure we make this transition. And that confidence should give policymakers confidence that gas isn't the future, electric appliances is the future, and more confidence for passing policies like gas bans or policies like burnout on replacement, knowing that the whole country is moving in that direction and it isn't just us here in the Bay Area. And lastly, as people utilize these incentives, they utilize these rebates and tax credits, they interact with the Inflation Reduction Act, they will become folks who have been benefited by this transition and more willing to be in favor of climate action. And I think one of the successes of this bill is, unlike other legislation that might have been focused more on smaller impacts that affect everyone but are harder to see and realize, these impacts are more targeted, and the people who get benefits of it are going to remember that. And we should realize that hopefully as we continue to administer the program, more people will be willing to pass bolder and support bolder climate legislation. And I hope myself that everyone who gets a new heat pump or gets a chance to drive an EV for the first time, or gets insulation that makes a home more comfortable, will become someone who will vote for someone in office that is in favor of climate legislation, because climate legislation helped their lives. So that is just a wrap up of how I think us in the nonprofit world should be thinking about the Inflation Reduction Act.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. There's already a question from Brian.
Well, I just wanted to add something to one of Jared's comments. He said that the industry is moving in that direction, or other parts of the country are moving in the direction of heat pumps and so forth. One of the impacts of the bill is actually to ensure that the American automobile industry survives as an industry and as part of our economy, because the rest of the globe is moving away from the internal combustion engine, and there's a resistance in this country. So to the same extent that the infrastructure bill last year created a lot of money for public transit or roads or whatever it was aimed at, this is really also a way for the American economy to survive into the well into the 21st century around a key industry. And it's also a key industry for national defense. So we can't just let other nations suddenly become the leaders in national defense technology any more than we would allow them to become leaders in biotechnology. This is really part of what this bill is about. Thank you.
I also want to pick up on something else that JJ said about just reinforcing that voting matters. Voting is coming up. Environmentalists, for some reason, are not like a great voting bloc. They don't come out and vote as much as you think. It makes a huge difference for people to know that, that these bills are supported from politically, both on a local level and on a national level. So if anybody's interested, Thrive does a lot of voter outreach. Even if you are not a nonprofit that necessarily deals directly with civic participation, but you're interested in doing some voter outreach for your community, we have this really cool toolkit that we can just hand you that's got all the information that you can give to your community to get them more excited and interested in voting. So I'm sure there are more questions for JJ. No. Exhausted all of our questions. Acterra is doing all kinds of great things. If you're not on their mailing list yet, you should absolutely get on their mailing list so you know everything that's going on with all of their various programs. With that, my next plan was to do some breakout rooms. We could kind of talk individually in their smaller groups. First of all, to get to know each other, because we haven't had a great amount of time to do that, but also to really talk about action plans, kind of what's next. So before we break out into breakout rooms, I just want to again thank Brian and JJ for the fantastic presentations, and hopefully they can join us in some of the breakout rooms. We are going to make the breakout rooms completely random. So I see some people are dropping off, totally understand it's late in the afternoon, but we will do we'll do some quick breakouts just so we can get a chance to chat a little bit. And then after that, we will see you at the next event. So thank you all so much for coming, and see you in a breakout room. This is nice. Now everyone's got their camera on. So does anybody have anything they want to report out, or any questions that came up? Actually, we had a question for Kirsten, I think. JJ, did you want to ask her? I can't remember what it was.
But,
Do you remember what it was?
was it about PC?
Mm-hmm.
Was it about physical energy?
Yeah.
Yeah, we were wondering what you've heard about the ability for Peninsula Clean Energy to access IRA funds to be able to boost up their existing or new rebate or incentive programs. Because I know when I was talking to Brian, we had questions about that, about how that might work. And it seemed like you had already felt confident that IRA funding would definitely be able to be used in that type of way.
I'm tentatively confident. Yeah.
Very confident, okay.
Like, I think a lot of the details haven't been worked out yet. Like aid at this point, I haven't read the bill, but I suspect it says like, X amount of funding will go to this agency and they will figure it out, the details of how exactly it goes out. That said, we're really pretty good at this point at building our energy. We're getting better at building our energy programs around other people's energy programs, around regional Bay Rand programs, around the state and so on, and then creating a seamless process by which homeowners can apply in one place and get our money and their money and this other group's money through one application. So that I'm assuming that's what we would do, is create a way in which it makes it easier for organizations to apply in one place, whether it's at our portal or another portal, and get all the money all at once.
Yeah, and very happy to hear you're focusing in on making it as easy as possible, because that's one of my hobby horses is any barrier is a big barrier if you're busy all the time or have 2 jobs or are just struggling.
Yeah. And again, no promises. We don't know how this is all going to turn out. That's where I suspect this is all going to go.
Anne?
Hi, thank you. Quick question, Kirsten, because I don't get to PC meetings as often. I was at another webinar where the speaker was talking about working with small farmers, family farmers, as opposed to say huge corporate farmers, and that you can sort of solar farm and companion plant together. And it's a great way of keeping solar locally generated. And I've been trying to find him. It was just such a great program for our coast side that might also help the small farmers and might also give some vertical integration in job production with farm workers up there. And this speaker had the whole program. So if you could just carry that through to Jan and PCE from the alternate board member from Millbrae, it just sounded like a win-win on that. And that way the plant, and it works really well with the kinds of crops we grow on the coast side.
Great, thank you, Anne.
It's called agrivoltaic.
Is that it? Maybe it was a Thrive thing. It was just a great webinar. You pick up this info from different places. So thank you if it was Thrive.
And
I wish you were.
Actually, one of our interns are actually doing their a research project on agrivoltaics. I'll share the information that she also found as well, might be helpful.
I just put in a YouTube link as well about, I don't know who, somebody doing a great thing about agrivoltaics too. So it's an easy video, but I think that would be something that would be great if we could champion in San Mateo County, because we have agriculture and need for more local solar.
Well, the other thing that they said is a lot of small farmers barely are hanging on. And this is another revenue stream for them on a business that has very small margins. So it's a win-win.
As someone who regularly works with the ag community and am a farmer myself, I could see it being done for farmers who own their property. It would be harder. Most of our very small farmers lease land, and many of them lease land on peninsula open space. So it definitely has potential for select applications, but there are like anything.
I wonder if Post would be interested in helping out. It seems like it's something that they could. I don't know how that would fit with their vision of not building on, because ground mount solar is construction, right? And then so the video that I put in is actually not ground mount. It's on wheels and you move it. So and it's really high. So anyway, that way tractors and stuff can go through. And you can adjust the panels as necessary. I saw it on YouTube, so I'm not saying that this is whatever, but it's because I've seen the ground mount one, and that seems harder because there's more logistics of can you get your tractor through and things like that. But this was a really cool idea.
Actually,
so, in the channel,
actually, folks who are interested in working on this, Acterra also has a coalition called Homegrown Bay Area. Right now, we're working on doing policy work on plant-forward dieting, but we in the next couple of months want to do some more policy work on sustainable and local farming, and this is one of the things that we've been looking at. And if folks are interested in working with us on, talking to policymakers about solutions here, I definitely would love to, work with you all.
Jared, I just signed up for a 3 or 4 or 5 week training in plant-based diet. I think it's outside, it's not just California. Are you connected to that? For me, I need to learn.
Who's administering it?
I just signed up. I could, let me go look for one of the links and I'll put it in chat.
Okay, yeah, 'cause I know I'm working with the Factory Farming Awareness Coalition. They have a lot of trainings out, but it may not be that one. Yeah, definitely love to keep in touch. I don't know if I need to put my email address here. I'll just put in the chat for folks who want to stay in touch.
Vanessa?
Yeah, it's okay to switch to another question. One thing that stuck with me from your presentation, JJ, was about the role of nonprofits in terms of conducting outreach and helping community members understand the bill and how to take advantage of all of the different credits. And so one thing that I hadn't heard about and was curious about is if the bill provides support to nonprofits and communities to build up that capacity to help do outreach and inform residents about the tax credits and whatnot.
I'm not sure if there's money specifically laid out for outreach per se. Maybe Brian might answer that question. I do know that I'm right now on pins and needles to hear the National Council of Nonprofits report on the IRA. They haven't been able to get a full report yet, but in the next couple of weeks they should. And I think I might answer a couple of those questions that I'm thinking about, as well as what money may particularly be carved up for nonprofits. But I'm not sure if there's specifically money directly for outreach.
I vaguely recall money, but I don't believe it was applicable to the peninsula because I think it involved tribal communities. So I just was on the line. I was just doing a search while you were talking. I'll try and find something, but I'm almost certain it was about tribal communities.
But it's definitely a great question, and one of the ones that I'm gonna still be researching and figuring out the next couple of weeks.
Okay, with that, we're going to let you all go because it's late, it's hot.
Wait, let me post.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I gotta
Don't
get
leave
back.
until Anne put something in the chat.
I can't get back to it. No, there it is.
And I'm happy to send out these links, and and by me, I mean Tracy is going to put together a nice email after this, and she can put together some of these posts and resources in the follow-up email.
Good.
It's always nice to share information.
Yep, and to answer your question, and this actually isn't owned by us, so might be curious to maybe get connected with them. If you check out our webpage, acterra.org/HGPA, you'll see all of our partners in our coalition.
Cool. So many things, so little time. So
Yep.
as an elected, it's really great when you guys give us one pagers with a simple to do and then show up at our council meetings.
As staff, it's really good when electeds can take 100-page reports in and just condense it on the, no, I'm joking. Have fun, everybody.
Thank you,
Thank
Ryan.
you all. Have a great day.
Thank you, JJ. Have
Thank
a good
you.
evening, everyone.
Take care.
Bye.
Keep safe.
Bye.